Everyone having a right to a safe and stable home benefits us all. I come with no other agenda than desperately trying to help people who are...
No one inside the palace expected Prince William to make a decision that would instantly shake the future of the British monarchy. When he stepped forward with a carefully prepared statement, the atmosphere inside the room changed before he even spoke. Every senior official understood that what was about to happen could permanently alter the royal family's future. Yet one person was noticeably absent: King Charles himself. That silence immediately raised questions. Why wasn't the king standing beside his son? And why had William chosen to deliver such a sensitive announcement alone? As cameras focused on the future king, he wasted no time softening his words. He declared that Queen Camilla would permanently withdraw from all official royal responsibilities and would not return to public royal life in any ceremonial capacity. The announcement lasted only a few moments, but its impact echoed throughout the palace. It wasn't simply another royal update, it felt like the closing of an entire chapter. Behind those carefully chosen words stood years of hidden disagreements, private family struggles, and impossible choices that had finally reached their breaking point. What the public witnessed was only the beginning of a much deeper story. As William finished reading the statement, an uncomfortable silence settled across the palace. No questions were invited, no explanations followed, and the prince walked away with the same calm expression he had worn from the beginning. Inside another private room, Camilla quietly received a written copy of the announcement. She stared at the pages for several moments before asking only one question: had King Charles personally approved every word? The hesitation that followed from the palace official answered far more than any spoken response could have. For Camilla, the silence carried more pain than the decision itself. After years of standing beside Charles through criticism, controversy, and public judgment, she now faced the possibility that her royal journey was ending without hearing directly from the man she had always defended. At the same time, palace staff had already begun redistributing her official responsibilities. Engagements disappeared from schedules, future ceremonies were reassigned, and confidential planning had clearly been underway long before William stepped before the cameras. This was never a sudden announcement. It had been carefully organized behind closed doors, leaving little room for any last-minute reversal. Behind this dramatic decision stood three individuals carrying completely different emotional burdens. Prince William believed that protecting the future of the monarchy required difficult choices, even if they caused personal heartbreak. As the future king, he feared that unresolved questions surrounding Camilla's influence could eventually weaken public trust in his own reign. King Charles, however, faced a painful conflict between his duty as monarch and his loyalty as a husband. He deeply valued the woman who had remained beside him through decades of public criticism. Yet he also understood that every unresolved issue today could become a challenge for William tomorrow. For Camilla, the situation felt like the ultimate betrayal. After spending years earning public acceptance and supporting Charles through some of the monarchy's darkest moments, she now watched the institution she had worked so hard to serve quietly move forward without her. Each of them believed they were protecting something important. William was protecting the crown, Charles was protecting his marriage, and Camilla was protecting the dignity she had fought for over many years. But those three different priorities could no longer exist together, and the palace was about to witness the consequences of that impossible reality. Long before the public announcement, tension had already reached dangerous levels behind palace walls. A private succession meeting had been arranged to discuss how the monarchy would function in the future, but instead of bringing clarity, it exposed deep divisions within the royal family. During that confidential discussion, Camilla reportedly made it clear that she wished to remain involved in key royal matters even after William eventually became king. To her, it seemed like a reasonable way to preserve stability and continue supporting the crown. William, however, viewed the proposal very differently. He believed that the beginning of a new reign demanded complete independence, free from the influence of arrangements made during his father's rule. Speaking calmly but firmly, he explained that a future monarch could not lead effectively if another center of authority continued to exist behind the scenes. The room quickly fell silent as everyone waited for King Charles to respond. Instead of taking a clear position, the king lowered his eyes and remained quiet. That silence spoke louder than any argument. In that moment, William realized the difficult decision would eventually fall upon his own shoulders, because no one else was willing to establish the boundaries the future monarchy required. The meeting ended without any official agreement, but everyone present understood that something irreversible had begun. Camilla felt deeply disappointed, believing that years of loyalty and sacrifice were being overlooked in favor of an uncertain future. She reminded those in the room that she had stood beside Charles during some of the most difficult periods in royal history and deserved greater trust after everything they had overcome together. Princess Anne listened carefully before offering a calm but direct response. She explained that protecting the institution had to remain more important than protecting personal feelings, no matter how painful that reality might be. William quietly stood, gathered his papers, and before leaving, privately informed his father that the issue could no longer remain unresolved. If no decision was made soon, he would be forced to address it publicly himself. Those words placed enormous pressure on Charles, yet once again the king offered no clear promise. As William walked away, the atmosphere inside the room felt heavier than ever. Everyone sensed that future conversations would no longer be about compromise. They would be about choosing between family loyalty and the long-term stability of the crown itself. Only days later, William requested one final private meeting with both Charles and Camilla, hoping to settle the matter before it grew into an even larger crisis. The discussion took place away from advisors, officials, and cameras, leaving only the three people whose lives would be changed forever. William arrived carrying a formal document outlining Camilla's complete withdrawal from future royal responsibilities. Before the papers were even opened, emotions began rising. Camilla accused William of allowing old family wounds to influence his judgment, suggesting that personal history was shaping a decision being presented as constitutional reform. William remained composed, insisting that his actions were driven by responsibility rather than resentment. He explained that every future king must inherit a monarchy with one clear structure, not one divided by overlapping influence or unresolved promises. Charles finally broke his silence, admitting that he had once promised Camilla she would never be pushed aside during his lifetime. William respectfully replied that such a promise could exist between husband and wife, but it could never bind the reign of the next monarch. At that moment, everyone in the room understood that the future of the monarchy had become more important than any personal promise, and there was no path back to the way things once were. After that emotional meeting, the issue was no longer about personal disagreements. It became an official palace operation. William quietly instructed trusted royal staff to begin preparing a complete transition plan. Every department connected to Camilla's public role started reviewing future schedules, ceremonial appearances, staff assignments, and administrative responsibilities. The process was designed to prevent uncertainty once the decision became public. At the same time, King Charles carefully examined every document placed before him, fully aware that each signature represented another step toward ending a chapter of his wife's royal life. Princess Anne remained one of the few people willing to speak honestly. She gently reminded her brother that delaying the inevitable would only increase Camilla's pain while creating greater uncertainty for William's future reign. Charles briefly considered preserving a limited advisory role for his wife, believing it might balance compassion with stability. However, William remained firm. He argued that even a private position behind palace walls would continue raising questions about influence and authority. Reluctantly, Charles accepted that protecting the future crown required a clean separation rather than a compromise. It was one of the hardest decisions of his reign, but the machinery of the monarchy had already begun moving forward. The true impact of the decision became visible the following morning. There was no dramatic farewell, public confrontation, or official ceremony marking Camilla's departure. Instead, everything simply changed overnight. Her usual briefing papers failed to arrive, scheduled meetings quietly disappeared from her calendar, and several staff members who had worked beside her for years were informed that they would now report to different royal offices. At first, Camilla believed it was an administrative delay, but the silence around her quickly revealed the truth. The routines that had shaped her daily life for years had vanished without warning. Even charitable organizations connected to her office received instructions directing future communication through newly assigned palace departments. One by one, familiar faces disappeared from her surroundings as responsibilities were transferred elsewhere. Every missing document and every canceled appointment served as another reminder that the palace had already adapted to a future without her. The transition happened so smoothly that it became impossible to ignore one painful reality: the institution was continuing exactly as planned, even as one of its most recognizable figures quietly stepped away from public life. Watching these changes unfold was deeply painful for King Charles. Although he remained the reigning monarch, he found himself unable to reverse the process without creating an even greater conflict inside the royal family. Hoping to preserve at least one meaningful tradition, Charles privately asked William whether Camilla could continue attending a single annual service beside him. It was a modest request, motivated more by personal affection than royal protocol. William respectfully declined. He explained that allowing even one exception would weaken the clarity of the decision and encourage endless public speculation about a future return. Charles understood the reasoning, but the rejection left him emotionally exhausted. Meanwhile, Camilla quietly turned the pages of her diary, only to discover weeks of empty space where official engagements once filled every day. The silence surrounding those blank pages carried a message stronger than any public announcement. Soon afterward, Princess Anne visited her alone. She brought no legal papers or palace instructions, only an honest conversation. For the first time since the crisis began, Camilla had the opportunity to hear the difficult truth from someone who understood both duty and personal sacrifice better than almost anyone else within the royal family. During their private conversation, Anne chose honesty over comfort. She gently explained that William's decision was final and that continuing to resist it would only prolong everyone's suffering. She also revealed something Camilla had never fully realized: King Charles had quietly asked William to delay the announcement, hoping that additional time might ease the tension inside the family. William refused, believing that postponing the decision would only create months of uncertainty, political speculation, and growing divisions within the monarchy. According to Anne, the prince was not trying to punish Camilla. He was trying to protect the institution he would one day inherit. She assured Camilla that her personal security, private home, and marriage to Charles would remain untouched. Only her official authority within the monarchy was ending.